dawn, a voice that lingers when night is gone. Twin cities hum with stories spun. John Justice rides the rising sun. Zima fizz in a plastic cup. Star Wars dreams keep lifting him up. Costco aisles is sacred ground where neon shadows spin around.
And welcome into Hour 2 of the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. And thank you once again for your patience this morning. If you want to leave us a blast, a comment that we can share on the air, your thoughts on any of the topics that we are covering this morning, you can do that by simply giving us a call at 612-584-4565. That's 612-584-4565. You can email as well, john.justice. I did it again with the Don, didn't I? John.justice at AmericanExperiment.org. You can email the show there. Coming up in about an hour from now, we will be joined by David Zimmer here from Center of the American Experiment. And I had initially invited him in over his piece, U.S. Border Security and Immigration Enforcement, Undeniable Success Amidst the Noise. However, he has a brand new piece this morning talking about Hennepin County Attorney Scary Moriarty and how she's wrong. The good and pretty federal investigations did follow precedent. So we'll dive into both of those pieces with David Zimmer coming up just after 8 o'clock this morning. We are streaming up on both Facebook and YouTube, and of course at AmericanExperiment.org. and on the MixLR app. And again, thank you for your patience this morning. We were dealing with some unforeseen technical difficulties that are, kind of coming along with the new show that we're doing. We're venturing into new ground, producing a live daily show, and it's not going to be without its hiccups as we get everything going. So we greatly appreciate your patience as we continue to iron out this new live show. And it speaks volumes about how we were actually able to accomplish what we did accomplish in the very short period of time. But we wanted to bring the show back as soon as we could. And so with that, again, we've just been dealing with a couple of technical issues. This morning, it had nothing to do on our end. So I have no idea what was going on. So there'll be some emails going out to the program's individuals coming up after the show. The show today. All right, let's go here. Let's talk about some DFL infighting. I have some audio that I want to share with you as well. So, U.S. Representative Angie Craig, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan debated on Minnesota Public Radio, highlighting their close race. The debate featured personal attacks, including accusations from Senator John Hoffman about Craig seeking his endorsement while he was in the ICU. Both candidates face vulnerabilities. Craig's vote for the Laken Riley Act and Flanagan's association with widespread fraud during her tenure as lieutenant governor, as summarized by the AI overlords from the Fox 9 website. Let me get into an Alpha News version of the story, though. So late last week, Senator John Hoffman spoke at a rally in support of Flanagan's campaign for U.S. Senate. At that rally, Hoffman claimed that Craig sought his endorsement when he was still in the hospital recovering from the shooting. So Hoffman said at last week's rally for Flanagan that when Craig would check on our family, she asked that I endorse her campaign. Hoffman said at last week's rally for Flanagan, she sent a dear friend out twice when I was in the ICU and once in our home. Honest to God, true story. What's so shocking that a Democrat was actually nice to another Democrat? Is that the... Okay. I'm being public about it because it really irked me, Hoffman said. The state senator continued saying that Craig asked for his endorsement when the Hoffman's family story had high visibility. In contrast, Hoffman said Flanagan checked on us out of her love for how we are doing. Oh, give me a break already. Listen, I've got no love for either of these individuals, for Craig Flanagan or John Hoffman. It's a horrible what happened to him, but two things being true at once. You can point out how horrible it was of what happened to him, while at the same time you can also go and identify the fact that he's absolutely been taking advantage of that circumstance and that tragedy, which is really disgusting in my opinion. So Craig ended up rejecting Hoffman's story, telling the Minnesota Star Tribune that emphatically what has been asserted is untrue. Ooh. Asserted is untrue. She also said that Hoffman's story is questioning my personal integrity, and I simply would never do what has been assessed that I did. Now, the Star Tribune did obtain a screenshot, of which if you're watching on the YouTube feed, you can see for yourself, of a text to Craig sent Hoffman from the day of the shootings, which Craig said that she was praying for Hoffman and his wife. The text did not contain any mention of the U.S. Senate race. Additionally, Craig went on Fox 9 and says he does not know exactly what John is talking about, but I would never do that. No one would ever do that. Alpha News did contact Craig's campaign for the story, but they did not hear back. And color me not surprised. Hoffman responded to Craig in a statement reported by multiple news media outlets. The screenshots released by her campaign showed a direct message from Congresswoman Craig. They do not address the substance of what I said, that a dear and trusted friend approached us twice on her behalf regarding an endorsement, once while I was in the ICU and again while I was covering at home. The senator's statement went on to acknowledge that Craig expressed sympathy after the shooting occurred, but said the endorsement request came later. Penny Flanagan's repeated contacts with our family were different, Hoffman added. In his statement, Peggy reached out simply to ask whether Yvette, Hope, and I were okay. She sought nothing in return. The back and forth between Hoffman and Craig is just the latest development in what has become a volatile race for the DFL nomination. And again, it's so frustrating because let them fight. It's incredibly entertaining to watch these divides within the DFL. You know, and I think that most people understand the dynamics here and that Angie Craig would be a more formidable opponent against whomever is the GOP nominee for this Senate race, where Peggy Flanagan is a lot more vulnerable. Obviously, individuals like Hoffman and others feel differently, whereas Gwen Walz, as we talked about at the start of the show this morning, threw her endorsement behind Angie Craig, which, in my opinion, was just a cowardly move by Governor Tim Walz because he didn't want to take a stance in going and supporting an individual who was running against his lieutenant governor. So instead, Gwen Walz goes and gives the endorsement. I don't know anybody, left or right, that looks up to Gwen Walz as any sort of inspiration. But this way, you know, Walz can have it both ways. Walz throws their support behind Angie Craig. Dim Walz doesn't have to, but yet everybody knows the reality of it. It's just political theater. Now, the article wraps up saying that Flanagan has repeatedly attacked Craig for a pro-ICE vote that she took in the U.S. House of Representatives. Meanwhile, Craig has argued that Flanagan's ties to Minnesota's fraud saga made her a poor candidate in the general election. So let me get to a couple of audio clips. As mentioned in the story, both Angie Craig and Peggy Flanagan were making the rounds on local leftist media. So first off, we'll start with Peggy Flanagan. Peggy Flanagan thinks that Governor Tim Walz has been on top of tackling the fraud issue. Here is what she had to say.
Office of Inspector General, I think, is powerful. Keith Ellison, now the Attorney General, has additional resources to be able to go after Medicaid fraud. And, you know, Governor Walz has been incredibly aggressive, in fact, turning off, funding for a program, that criminals have access.
No, he hasn't. She knows he hasn't. He had to turn off those programs. The only individuals who have been aggressive in going against fraud have been, some of those attorneys here in Minnesota, some of whom have retired, who have stayed on top of it. And then also the Trump administration. As a matter of fact, Trump was giving a speech yesterday, I believe, in Michigan, and was talking about the amount of fraud that has been exposed.
To stop the massive theft of taxpayer dollars. We ended Medicaid for illegal immigrants, and we launched the war on fraud, led by our great Vice President, J.D. Vance. It's having a tremendous... We're finding unbelievable levels of fraud. Minnesota, that governor is so crooked. Ilhan Omar with her brother, so crooked. But it's all under very serious investigation. We're finding billions of dollars, billions.
The only reason why Governor Jim Walz ended up addressing the fraud at all was simply because it could not be avoided any longer. And any moves that he has made regarding tackling fraud have been specifically politically expedient for him, or the fraud was just so bad it simply could not be ignored. Now, Angie Craig, talking with the same leftist media, was going into the issue of the top 1%ers paying their fair share.
No, we've got to eliminate the cap. We've got to make people who are fortunate enough to make over $186,000 continue to pay into Social Security. I don't think a lot of people realize that the wealthy in this country, the wealth gap in this country is killing us. And people know that, but I don't think people realize that if you're lucky enough to make $1 million a year, you stop paying into Social Security on the first $186,000.
You know, that's all fine and dandy, but as others have noted, Bill Glahn wrote about this online yesterday. Walter Hudson posted in response to this very clip. I'll share with you what Walter had to say. The top 1% paid 38.4% of all federal income tax. The top 10% paid 70.5%. The top 50 paid 96.7%. The bottom 50 paid 3.3%. And as Walter Hudson writes at the end of his post on X, define fair share. They never will. They never will. It's a straight up lie. And unfortunately, too many on the left, the broken and the brainwash, they simply roll right along with it. They don't care. They're not interested in finding the truth at all. They want to be super served that which can go and reinforce their ridiculous ideas, that liberal policies, that Democrat parties are sustainable in any way, shape, or form. That's all anybody on the left is looking for. If there's anybody on the left that's actually searching for the truth and willing to hear the truth, accept the truth, and change their mind, they're no longer on the left. You can either call them a moderate or a conservative, but they are not liberals anymore. So Angie Craig going out there and continually and lazily, because that's what it is. It really is just, it's lazy politics to win an election. It's all ego with these individuals. It's all power with these individuals. They have no desire to get at the truth in any way, shape, or form. The line to leave a blast is 612-584-4565. Again, 612-584-4565. And you can email me, john.justice@americanexperiment.org.
Hey, John. Angie Craig is a liar, liar, liar. She tried to exploit the killing of the 3 Burnsville first responders by recruiting a first responder to go and parade them in front of the State of the Union address back then. She is pathetic, and she is a liar.
Thank you so much for the blast, Richard. Again, 612-584-4565 if you would like to also leave a blast. Let's go and let's hear from this individual on the blaster line.
John, this is Eric from Brainerd. I just want to let you know that capitalism is terrible. I kid. Not John. And, sorry, not Eric. Anyway, great new show. Love it. Take care.
I can only see a portion of the transcript over here on the blast. And for a moment, I actually thought it was Eric and Brainerd. And I just realized now that Isaac probably has no idea what I'm talking about.
Not a clue.
Good morning, buddy. How are you?
Good morning.
Every day's an adventure, huh?
Every day is an adventure.
We should see. I know we're lining up advertisers for the show. By the way, if you want to get in on the ground floor of the John Justice Show and be an advertiser on the show. Again, we are lining up and getting our ducks in a row, and hopefully you'll be hearing from some, maybe some familiar advertisers of my past, and also hopefully some new ones as well. But individuals are showing a great bit of interest and excitement over what it is we're doing here at American Experiment with the John Justice Show. The simplest way to do that is just to email me. If you're interested in running advertising here on the show as we grow the audience via the audio feeds at americanexperiment.org or on the MixLR app, and as we grow the video platform on this, we've put a lot of effort into delivering a high quality video product, which you can watch right now, both on Facebook and YouTube. Again, email me, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. And if you are watching on the live feed right now, you can probably see down in front of me, we got a couple items. We got a John Justice mug, but we also got a brand new John Justice hat, to which I showed my son Kyle yesterday the hat. He was like, dude, that it's cool. And I said, yeah, it is cool. He's like, no, it's embroidered. Like the embroidery of it, that really hit home with him. So you can get yourself a brand new John Justice logoed hat. Also has American Experiment on the back. They're really good quality. Make a donation to Center of the American Experiment. The easiest way to do that is just head on over to americanexperiment.org. And if you go to my page there on the website, you'll find the link to make a donation. And with your donation to Center of the American Experiment, you will pick yourself up a John Justice show hat. Many of you have, and I so appreciate all the help. And I've had a lot of people reaching out. How can we go and support the show? And through your support, hopefully we can go and take care of some of our technical glitches as well, right? So head on over to americanexperiment.org and make a donation and get yourself a John Justice Show hat. We are working on other merchandise as well that you'll be able to get your hands on.
Good morning, John. This is Matt from Apple Valley. Maybe instead of talkbacks, how about interjections from the fans? Have a great show. Thank you, John.
I appreciate the idea. I had lawyer extraordinaire Jeff O'Brien called me yesterday, very excited. And I won't get into all the details. For you long-term listeners of the show, you've heard me tell this story. It may have been on a post-show podcast. But myself, my dear friend Drew, Samantha Sansevier, and a handful of others, we created an app many years ago now. I say many years. After 10 years of being here, it was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. We created an app called Blaster, and the idea was to create. I had this idea where I wanted to make an audio-based Twitter, which is really interesting now because Twitter X actually ended up going that way. They ended up doing my idea, but we built the app. Unfortunately, the company that built the app ended up getting hacked, and all of that proprietary information went along with that company folding. So the app ended up just evaporating before our very eyes. But the app was called Blaster. And when you would use the audio and post on the app, you would be posting a blast. So lawyer extraordinaire Jeff O'Brien, he called me yesterday. He's like, hey, why don't you call the new comment line instead of talkbacks? Why don't you call them blasts? And I'm like, yes, I'm going to do that. So they're now blasts. Leave us a blast at 612-584-4565. All right, let's talk about the latest in woke America. Yesterday, I discussed at the end of the show, and if you missed it, the podcast is available. You can listen to the podcast on the MixLR app, but also on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and my former employer's app as well. You can find John Justice, the new John Justice Show presented by American Experiment is there. But at the end of the show, I talked about the funding going to the University of Minnesota for this one lunatic's idea of transgender dolls for children. Well, I have a story that relates to that, of a new woke art exhibit that wants to go and point to a child's a children favorite of the past, saying that it was essentially a transgender show. So I'll give you details on this in just a minute. But first, here is some reporting from Fox News about the University of Minnesota and the gender dolls that I was talking about yesterday, just to get you up to speed here on the John Justice Show.
Funded paper dolls come with genitalia that can be removed and then swapped out. A therapist at the University of Minnesota Medical tells the New York Post that they spent over a decade developing the dolls. The goal is to help kids, quote, learn about the different options that exist for who they can be. The website for the dolls promises to, quote, make gender fun. It says they were designed for clinicians and educators and lists their purpose as therapeutic play and gender identity exploration. They'll reportedly be in classrooms with kids as young as 4. Kaylee, let's start with you. Your thoughts on this?
It's just remarkable that Tim Waltz failed to secure, the release of the illegal alien child rapist in Minnesota, who he tried to pardon, was deported anyway, and immediately turned his attention to this, to exposing young preschoolers to genitalia. Put aside the transgender element to this for a minute. Why does a 4-year-old need to be exposed to genitalia, period, point blank? It's completely unnecessary. And so I think, for those who predicted that maybe the left would take a more moderate approach on this issue after 2024 and that maybe they would, abandon wokeness altogether, no. Clearly, it's just lying dormant in some of these states. And when politicians, again, remember, he's not seeking re-election, he's done. And when they don't have any restraints, this is what happens. They pursue it to its full force, and they are only going to ever get more radical on this issue. So I think it's a warning for Republicans, but also for parents, for those of us who have young children, to constantly be on guard about this stuff.
Well, I just don't like the opening of adults having that intimate a conversation with a 4-year-old. I don't like it. I think we have enough pedophilia in our society not to have that happen. And if you think some aren't masquerading in regular places in our society, you're delusional. They are. So I don't want anybody telling my child, or anybody's child, 4 years old, by the way, if you put your hands in your pants, we can change that for you. Like, what kind of a message are we sending? Unless we're training, a bunch of surgeons and we want kids to start early with the idea of mutilation and surgery. Look, I'm going to talk plain. Because as disgusting as it sounds, imagine what the reality is.
Brass tacks economically. So the Minnesotans have just learned that billions of their tax dollars went out the window, right, funding terrorist organizations and worse. And now they're also learning on top of that whatever's remaining is funding this.
And what's so disturbing is that there's no chance that Minnesota won't go blue in the midterms. And
oh, you bite your tongue. Who was that guy? Show a little optimism, would you? Jeez Louise. The DFL's a mess. The GOP needs to get its act together, make no mistake, but the DFL's a mess. So if you are somebody supporting this type of nonsense on children, and nonsense is an understatement, you're only one of a few things. First up, you're either a straight-up pedophile, just if you're an individual, if the federal government gets access to your laptop or your computer at home, you're going to be serving a lifetime in prison. You're either that kind of person, you're a person who is adjacent to it and just so Looney Tunes that you don't realize how you're aligning with pedophilia, or you're a radical leftist looking to go and push an agenda. That's it. That's it. You're one of those three things. And there's varying degrees to all of this, right? You have the individuals at the top knowing that they can push this on minors regardless of the detriment, the lifelong harm that this would do, the toll that this would have and has had and will have on young children. And then they just go and end up spreading their propaganda to those other individuals that I mentioned. The broken and the brainwashed, the delusional, like this woman that was making these dolls. Somebody had posted yesterday online that they hadn't necessarily made their way into the education system yet. It was just one lunatic woman that was pushing this. But make no mistake, you cannot sit back and feel confident that it will stop there. That, this is just some radical Marxist, some lefty loony, and it won't go anywhere. No, we know where the slippery slope has gone and how easily susceptible leftists are to buying into all this garbage. How do you think all of this explicit material ended up in our public school classrooms, for crying out loud. Because there were too many good individuals who sat back and said, hey, don't worry about it. The rational voices will step in, especially over something in regards to children. And listen, I used to be one of those people. I used to be way, way, way more optimistic that this type of indoctrination would only go so far. But we've seen too many examples throughout the years of those very things that we thought could never happen. They end up happening. But this is why the left fights you every step of the way on these particular issues, because they know that. They want to appeal to the good nature of conservatives, the rational views that they have. And I don't want to say a Pollyanna view, but an optimistic view of society wherein you believe that it's not really possible for, adults to go and provide this type of explicit curriculum material to underage children. And yet here we are. And we see it happening on an almost, yearly basis, the injection of this type of LGBTQ propaganda into our schools. We have a blast rolling into the line, 612-584-4565, 612-584-4565, if you want to leave a blast.
Well, I bet Mrs. Potato Head asks if those genitalia that you can swap out come in different sizes.
Oh, Bob. That was friend of the show, Bob. That was friend of the show, Robert, saying if they come in different sizes. That's not appropriate. That's not appropriate at all. But I do appreciate you using the blaster line. Let's go here. From the Daily Wire, subsequent story. A woke taxpayer-funded exhibit in England claims the Care Bears toys are LGBT icons, describing one of the beloved children's characters as transgender and gender fluid. Funshine Bear is our yellow bear with a smiling sun in his belly and is considered to be transgender or gender fluid, the exhibit claimed, arguing that the character was voiced by female actors before 2024 and by male actors afterwards. Has anybody gone and made the similar analogy relating to the Peter Pan of when I was a kid? And it was, who was it? It wasn't Julie Andrews who played Peter Pan. It was a female that played Peter Pan, though, in one of the more famous, I believe it was, plays of it. She was playing a boy, but they needed somebody who was like an adult but looked similar to a child, and so it was played by a female. Have we seen this sort of adoption as well? Because this is what's happening here. They're basically co-opting imagery that had nothing to do with their LGBTQ agenda. Rainbows, light blues and pinks. It's all by design to force acceptance. Because their arguments are so flimsy, or because they're solely agenda driven, that they go and look at things in the past. Hey, that's a rainbow. Rainbows are exclusive to the gay community. And so, therefore, that must have been part of the LGBTQ community. And the same thing's going on here. They go on to say, bears like True Love Bear and others disrupt gender norms through their expression of them true selves, but are accepted regardless, the museum stated. This enables children and adults to realize that regardless of their identity, sexuality, and self-expression, they are loved. No, they were designed as fun bears that appeal to toddlers whose brains weren't developed, and therefore the characters were crafted and created for those young minds. Those young, innocent minds. They weren't there to indoctrinate individuals into a way of thinking on the left, which is what they're trying to do now. The Care Bears were also praised for their doing that thing with my fingers, deep association with symbols such as the rainbow, which became a symbol for the queer community back in 1978. Now, the exhibit did draw criticism from family advocacy organizations, saying taxpayers should not be funding such blatant attempts to sexualize children's toys and promote false gender identity, the Family Education Trust has said in an X post. So I had a couple of emails that rolled in regarding who ended up playing. So let's see here. Sandy Duncan, thank you. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for Sandy Duncan. I had Julie Andrews stuck in my head. It's funny, though, as a kid, and I'm not sure what this does to my entire commentary, but I remember as a young boy, when it came to Sandy Duncan, she was all right. It's just... Now, granted, there was some confusion, but there was some confusion as a kid. It's like, why is this person playing Peter Pan? Because Peter Pan is supposed to be a boy, you know? But apart from that, as a child, that's Sandy Duncan. Some thumbs up from Little John. Just saying. Probably shouldn't word it that way, huh? Thumbs up from a young John Justice. Let's do it that way instead. Last thing I want to do is conjure up the wrong imagery this morning on the show.
Peter Pan was Patty Duke. Everything that we see in Timmy Walls, he used to be a teacher, and now he's just being a creepy, grumpy grandpa with all this. He's a sexual deviant. Do we need any more evidence that he's a sexual deviant and that we should keep him away from all of our children as well as everybody else? My goodness, people.
I get what you're saying. I certainly understand your sentiment, but there's no evidence of that fact. I'm not defending Governor Tim Walz here, but I want to kind of move this over. He's just a radical leftist. And this is what radical leftists do. This is what they push. It's all about the power. It's all about control. It's all about indoctrinating kids at a young age. Listen, your point might be true, but I think it's more in line and better explained with just his commie background tendencies than anything else. He doesn't care about the kids. He wants to exploit the kids for his own political advantage and for the advantage of the Democrats. The Care Bears were in the Villiers Revealed Student Gallery, where University of Nottingham. Although I'm pretty sure when you say University of Nottingham, you have to say University of Nottingham. I think you're very pinkies up. It's a Nottingham University. Student volunteers found objects in the museum's collections having queer resonance. Oh, man. So many jokes I can make. I can actually get away with those jokes now, but I don't want to violate people's expectations. The idea of queer resonance has a lot of things that Harvey Firestein suddenly pops into my head. Among other selections were coins of Emperor Hadrian. Oh, my famous emperor. Just one. Yeah, I think it's Isaac, your favorite.
He's definitely top.
Hadrian. Yeah.
Definitely top 3.
Yeah. I got to take that back. It goes Palpatine and then it goes Hadrian.
Fair enough.
Okay. With whom the museum described as an openly queer figure, much like Emperor Palpatine. You heard it here first, everybody. Darth Sidious was gay. Actually, do we even know what his sexual orientation is? I don't.
Couldn't tell.
Yeah, Isaac's like, don't look at me, dude. I have no idea. I don't know where you're going. I was really having fun working on the show, and now I'm not so sure. Let's see. Emperor Hadrian, whom the museum described as an openly queer figure, a portrait of a mermaid praised by a transgender identifying people for their ability to transform, and dolls criticized because they uphold the patriarchal values and are either forced upon or forbidden to non-gender conforming children. The Telegraph notes that the display has been made digital because, according to its creator, John Slay, some people simply aren't ready or able to access queer spaces physically. Elena Kucharik, an American illustrator who created the original Care Bears, has never confirmed the characters were transgender or LGBT symbols because they weren't. They were made for kids. There was no agenda at the time to indoctrinate them into the leftist LGBTQ agenda. After creating the franchise, she went on to illustrate a Tyndale House Christian children's series, Little Blessings. I would take I would be much more inclined to believe the left on these issues if they ever chose to try to go and culturally appropriate unpopular characters. Like in this case, Care Bears. Everybody knows. Isaac, you know I say Care Bears. You know who the Care Bears are, right?
I do.
Yeah, and I think it was beyond. I mean, when you were a kid, do you remember the Care Bears, or was this something that you learned about?
No, I remember.
A little bit?
As a kid, a little bit.
They've been around for a long, long time, right? So, of course, you pick the Care Bears because Care Bears have universal, appeal. People know about the Care Bears, but they never pick on popular characters. You never see the LGBTQ activists or art exhibits coming out and saying, those Cabbage Patch Kids were non-binary. Did you know that all the Monchi-Chis were trans? I would give them just a little bit of credit if they would pick unpopular pop culture items to go and attach their agenda to. Did you know that Cop Rock was really a show that was dedicated to the LGBTQ movement? Always got to go and pick the popular items. I got a text from my wife. Oh, the Care Bear is missing the purple under the blue. That's right. It's not even complete. If you're an LGBTQ completist, Care Bear does not align with you.
Not completing the rainbow is based.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
I do believe the Munchie-Chis were trans, but that's just my own opinion. The blast line is 612-584-4565, 612-584-4565 if you want to go and comment on this story or anything that we're covering here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment, while I look over some of those blasts that have rolled in to 612-584-4565. Let's go here. Cracker Barrel CEO Julie Masino tried to ditch the company's iconic logo featuring Uncle Herschel, but 11 months later, the logo is back and she is gone. Bye-bye. The company announced that Masino will step down yesterday. So she's already stepped down after only 3 days at the helm of an iconic restaurant chain. I hear she's going to go and start her own online restaurant with streaming available on the MixLR app and on YouTube and Facebook.
Can she give us tips?
Maybe we need to reach out to her. Holy cow. During her tenure, Masino faced a social media revolt when the company unveiled its new minimalist logo and began removing the company's signature antique folksy decorations from its walls. So this all happened. This is all such a weird time when this all went down. So the Cracker Barrel controversy happened. Was that before the Sydney Sweeney jeans controversy, or was it? Not that it matters either way, but I know they all kind of happened right around the same time, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure which came first.
I want to say Cracker Barrel came first.
The chicken or the egg?
Yeah. The jeans or the cracker? Boy, if you're just tuning in, you're confused. I think it was the Cracker Barrel controversy first. Anyway, the severe backlash sent the stock down 15%. Masino quickly put her multi-year renovation plan on pause when she said that it was designed to modernize the store's menu and design. Okay, so I have a clip. It just makes me laugh. So this is the Cracker Barrel CEO, who's no longer the CEO of Cracker Barrel. She was on. It was one of the morning shows, and was talking about the renovations. What's funny about this clip, though, because this was back when she got the gig, back when they were making all the changes that everybody hated. And let me just say up front, Cracker Barrel, as I said back then, Cracker Barrel can do whatever the heck Cracker Barrel wants to do, but it doesn't mean that they're going to get a free pass from public scrutiny. They were making it generic and turning it into everybody, to everything else. And it's interesting to me, too, because if Cracker Barrel really was standing by, like if you needed any confirmation that this was about woke politics and not about appealing to customers, or they were just completely misguided, it's the fact that they actually relented and didn't end up making the changes. If they had the data, to point to that this was what the public actually wanted, right? Then they wouldn't have bowed to the controversy, but they did. But what's funny about this clip is at the end of it, I don't think she realized it, but one of the hosts on this show, and it may be like whatever the big morning show out of DC is, I can't remember the name. It doesn't matter. I don't know. It has all the most famous one with ABC. ABC Morning News.
Good Morning America?
Good Morning America. Thank you. Holy cow. Limited brain space. It's been a long month. I think it was on Good Morning America. I don't think she realized that the question that gets asked at the end of this little portion was fortuitous of the controversy that would ensue.
Honestly, the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive that people like what we're doing. I'll give you another soundbite. I actually happened to be in Orlando last week with all of our managers. We bring them together and every other year. And the number one question that I got asked, Michael, was, how can I get a remodel? When can I get a remodel? How do I get on the list?
Oh, really?
So because
Okay, let me stop here really quick. So that may or may not be true, but how many of those individuals knew what the remodel actually entailed? Like, was it just a memo went out, hey, we're doing some remodeling, and the Cracker Barrel stores was like, we could go for a remodel. Who doesn't want a remodel? We could go with a remodel. Well, maybe not we actually did do some remodeling, but maybe much more of a technical thing. Anyways, let's get back to the clip.
The feedback and the buzz is so good, not only from our customers, but from our team members. They want to work in a wonderful restaurant. So we're doing everything for our guests and our team members.
Well, Julie Messino, it's wonderful to have you here.
Pleasure to
and
be
thank
here.
You
thank
for
you again.
answering those questions for all the Cracker Barrel fans out there. There's a lot of great changes.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Robin?
Can I get in writing that the peg game is going to stay?
The peg game is staying.
Okay.
So are the rocking chairs, fireplace, vintage decor. It's all there.
All right. Okay. Because that would be a deal breaker. That would be a deal breaker.
That made me laugh because right there was the public consumer going, is the peg game still going to be there? Yeah, it'll still be there. Okay. Like, that's how it was important to people. And again, if a company wants to go and make a change, they can go and make a change, but they can't expect that everybody is going to love it and they're not going to face the public scrutiny. But again, this had a lot to do with the politics of the day, as I mentioned, because there was a lot of this woke commentary and a lot of these woke issues that were emerging, and specifically going back to Sydney Sweeney and the jeans controversy. Of the two, that was the most appealing. That was the most interesting, the Sydney Sweeney one, for no good reason, mind you.
Just big fan of jeans.
Yeah, I love a good pair of jeans. Mm-hmm. I'm wearing a pair of jeans right now. Love me a good pair of jeans. Find that more interesting than Cracker Barrel, regardless of who they end up being on. Let's go here. I have a local example of woke failure, but first, Minneapolis City Council member. You know what? I'm not going to bestow counsel on this guy. Because, a broken clock is right twice a day, and so is council member Michael Rainville. He says the city is facing a wide array of challenges, which include a budget crisis, council dysfunction. On that case, I'll go council. Council dysfunction and public safety issues. Rainville, in his second term as city council member, who belongs to the council's more moderate wing, described those challenges in an interview on the Better Minneapolis podcast last week and warned that the city is at a real turning point. Perhaps most pressing was Rainville referring to the city's budget crisis, saying Minneapolis is looking at a 13% increase in overall property tax collection next year, and if the city decides to fund all of its operations at the current levels, we can no longer keep raising property taxes. So every renter, every homeowner is paying the price for our overspending. And he points out that Minneapolis property tax collection was at its height after the city hosted the Super Bowl in 2018 and the NCAA tournament in 2019. Everything was working, he said. Hotels were full. Restaurants were full. There were 36,000 people employed just in the hospitality industry. Crime was low. It was all working. And then we had the double whammy of COVID and the riots, and it's just a city now. That was 100% manufactured by the leftist force in Minneapolis. They wanted it to happen. They executed their liberal, progressive agenda, and the city of Minneapolis has been paying the price ever since. It didn't need to be that way. Yes, there was a commonality of what everybody had to deal with regarding the ramifications of COVID, but there were right ways to deal with that and wrong ways to deal with that. And when we had the death of George Floyd, that's when the real turn ended up taking place. That's when things ended up going to the extreme far left because the radicals took over the agenda, and they've been driving the agenda ever since. Rainville, who described himself as belonging to the fiscally conservative wing of the city council, also called out the dysfunction on the council, divided between the more moderate DFLers and the far left Democrat Socialists of America aligned faction. And they're the ones that carry the most weight right now in Minneapolis. Earlier this year, the council actually hired a firm to help council members improve their working relationships and collaboration. If you have to hire a mediator in your office to go and deal with the problems between people, you got much bigger problems. It's not normal, Rainville said of the dysfunction, and it speaks to the inexperience and the lack of following the decorum and the rules of the council during the interview. Okay, he said council, I said council. During the interview, Rainville said that the council had been impacted by members who aren't doing their homework, which leads to disruptions to the normal legislative process. Yeah, because you have a bunch of lunatic activists serving on the Minneapolis City Council. What do you expect? The second-term council member also discussed the city's well-documented public safety problems. In his comments, Rainville compared the Minneapolis to Chicago, saying the city has come to expect that if it's a weekend, there's going to be shootings. Now, a major topic of discussion during Rainville's interview was the city council's vote against a no-cost 75-day pilot program to study the use of drones in law enforcement response. However, the Minneapolis City Council voted against using the drone pilot program on a 6-6 split vote. Far-left council members voted against the program and expressed concerns about surveillance of citizens and the drone company's relationship with ICE. Of course, these are the same lunatics that actually voted for, like, the speed and red light cameras. So it's all hypocritical, and there's all a double standard. And this is where Michael Rainville ends up jumping the shark. What ICE did here in Minneapolis was terrible, but it has nothing to do with the drone pilot program to see if it can help our local public safety. And listen, I know that Michael Rainville's on the left. It looks like he is fiscally conservative. So I don't have any expectations of conservatives being elected to the Minneapolis City Council. This is probably the best that you can get. And so it's fine. You want to go and criticize ICE. I know that is your religion on the left, and you're never going to be able to let go of it. But at least he's willing and able to step up and identify that they need to go and bring about further security measures in the city of Minneapolis. As a matter of fact, Minneapolis is being forced to go and hire the mandated number of law enforcement officers. So it is to say that if we had more people like Michael Rainville, absent we actually got a conservative or conservatives on the Minneapolis City Council, we would all be in better shape because the state needs a vibrant downtown metropolitan area for all that it brings in. And he's right. I remember being on the radio here pre-COVID when things were much better. You could see the warning signs. You could see the crime was beginning to tick up. You could see that individuals attending Twins games were starting to be assaulted on the streets. I remember talking about the concern over this. And a lot of that was related to the lack of law enforcement that we had. And yeah, it was exacerbated by COVID. And then, of course, the death of George Floyd and the riots that were allowed to ensue because it was beneficial for the DFL, the Democrats in Minnesota and Minneapolis, to have chaos reign in our streets, to have private businesses destroyed, all so they could go and exploit it for their own personal agenda. Now, as a microcosm, or perhaps like a smaller version of what took place or what is taking place in Minneapolis, I bring you the story of the Postmodern Times restaurant. I talked about this a couple of months ago when it popped up. So this was a restaurant that had the right idea, right? You craft a business model. You decide a location where you're going to go and conduct your business. because you know there is a need and demand in that region for quality food that people want to purchase. But then the Marxism and the socialism creeps into the agenda, and you decide to conduct a social justice experiment, which includes free food to anyone. In the wake of the ICE operation in Minneapolis, it's a microcosm of what's happened in Minneapolis. You had a good idea. You were successful in your business model. But again, your Marxist socialism screwed it all up. The owner at the time removed all the menu prices, ran a donation-based model to fight food insecurity and local immigration enforcement surges. So what were the results? Hold on a second. Let me gear up for this one. So the results were exactly what you would expect the results to be. Nothing short of an abject failure. 85% of the customers were either homeless or addicts. So good for them, I suppose. For a restaurant called Postmodern Times, maybe that is apropos. Isaac, do you want to chime in?
Well, I was just going to say we all need our target customers.
Right?
You know.
It was a nice looking restaurant too. I was looking at the video. I have audio I'm going to share with you in just a moment. So 85% of the customers, homeless or addicts, they served over 30,000 free meals funded by community donations over 6 months. The model proved ultimately unsustainable.
No.
I know, right? Nobody could have predicted this. Zohran Mamdani is going to find this out really soon. Forcing a pause due to burnout and financial strain. Well, of course it was. So this post was on, I found this yesterday on X. The account was Amy Lou Who. And they write, can mutual aid restaurant models ever work long-term without permanent external funding, or are they bound to burn out? Why do you even need to ask that question? Of course, there's no long-term sustainability to this. We'll just give out free stuff. And we'll hope that somebody fills in the backside. So there was an interview done with the owner of the restaurant, of which I'm telling you, just the response here is classic. Listen to this on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. This is the owner of Postmodern Times talking about his grand experiment that has fallen by the wayside.
My name's Dylan Elverson. I own Modern Times Cafe, which for the last 6 months has been Postmodern Times. Out of protest after George Floyd, Renee Good, and Alex Preddy's murder, we took our prices off our menus this 6 months ago to the day, and have been running an entirely free restaurant for 6 months. And it's been successful in all the ways that we intended, which is feeding people for free with public donations as long as...
Hold on. It's been totally successful. People got free food. What's that? We do free food here. Like, I still haven't taken advantage of it. Every Wednesday, right?
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday, right? It's successful. Everybody gets food here on Wednesdays. It's so well, yeah, it's successful. But, you know, ask the person that has to pay for it every time. Every time. We're not getting that food for free.
As we could, and like anything right now, it has come to a point where we need to take a break. We're all exhausted. My staff has done an incredible job every day in the worst and most psychotic business structure maybe in America. And
at least he's honest.
We're going to take a break and look at everything we learn, document stuff. We're looking for people's stories and pictures, and it's created so many ideas and positive parts of the story and negative. So
real quick, you mentioned something about like your business model that is very uncanny, to say the least.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little? So it was pay what you can afford, or suggested donation, and how is that working out? You said it was successful. Like, can you help us make sense of that?
Absolutely. Our business model was us taking our prices off of food. Well, honestly, for the first month, we took prices off everything. And
that's not a business model. That's just erasing things. The look on Isaac's face, right? You got to get a camera on you, dude. It's priceless. It's not a... Our business model is to not conduct any business.
And we were a for-profit business that had zero prices. So anyone that came in could donate if they wanted, but everyone could eat regardless. So we kind of separated out income stream from our business, and with the model goal of serving as many people as we could and keeping our staff employed through another crisis.
And then the people that are coming in, are you seeing, like, is it typically unhoused people? Are there college students, artists?
How do you immediately identify somebody who's on the left? They use the term unhoused. No conservative uses unhoused.
Are there people, like, what does a typical customer look like?
Right now, I wouldn't say there is a typical customer,
Dirty.
and it's changed a lot over 6 months.
Strung out.
At this point, 85% probably of our customers are people experiencing homelessness or addiction or some form of problem that has given them limited access to restaurants or food, especially cooked food in general.
This is a parody. This is straight out of Portlandia. This is Babylon Bee material. You could post that under the Babylon Bee X feed, and people will go, that's really funny. Babylon Bee. They did it again.
Yeah, the guy with the restaurant.
Yeah.
I think he should rename its history because I think he's going to go out of business because he's a complete and utter idiot. Have a great day.
Yeah, you have a great day, too. Thank you for the blast. If you would like to leave us a blast, to 612-584-4565. We have some comments that rolled in regarding the conversation with Michael Rainville and the Minneapolis City Council here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment.
Good morning, John. I'm sure glad you're back. I really missed you. I was born and raised in Minneapolis, and I don't recognize you anymore. I'm glad you emphasized Michael Rainville this morning. He's an example of a conservative citizen council person who's not an activist and who are an activist of the city. Thank you again. Again, I'm glad you're back. Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, and listen, can we just have people that are going to act rationally? I know we're not all going to agree. I know we're not all going to agree on the issues. I get that. But can we at least have individuals that are going to be rational in their approach when it comes to public safety? We're going to talk more about public safety here in just a moment. So, hat tip to Michael Rainville, although, based off of all these controversies, I do wonder if the clock is ticking on that guy and his time in the Minneapolis City Council chambers.
Well, John Gonzo, they don't need drones. They just need to hire police officers and back their people up. That's the biggest problem. Well, that's one of them. The other problem is judges need to be held accountable for the sentences that they hand down.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. They do whatever they want.
Thank you so much, Gonzo. And it warms my heart that the regulars from the John Justice Show are arriving here on the John Justice Show as we enter into Hour 3, presented by American Experiment. Thank you for the blasts. If you want to leave us a blast, to 612-584-4565. Before we talk with our next guest, I have one more piece of audio to share. This came out of an ABC News affiliate, and I believe this was this is a story talking about something very similar when it came to one of these co-op grocery stores and how it also ended up meeting the standards of what we would term failure.
It's clear this Sunfresh at 31st and Prospect is struggling. This is the first section people see when they come in. There's barely any produce. A lot of the coolers and shelves around the store look the same way, empty. So shoppers have been asking us, if the store isn't closing, then where's all the food? A rotten smell comes through the door, and anywhere you turn, you'll see products that need to be restocked. No hot food or deli.
There was a time this store was on life support. I can tell you today, right now, it's damn near dead.
This is a new low, even to people like Pat Clark, who've watched the store go through its ups and downs.
30 days ago, hell, we looked like a grocery store again.
The city owns the Linwood Shopping Center. A nonprofit operates the grocery store. Public and private investments are in the millions of dollars for the center.
John, this Progressive Restaurants owner's problem is he relied on the generosity of the people around him in an area of people that are predominantly not generous with their own funds. People that are reliant and basically, reliant on the government for help.
Yep.
That was his biggest mistake, his assumption.
It was all done out of activism for this guy. You know, he was responding to what happened with ICE. He wanted to garner some headlines. I don't know if he was delusional enough to think that this was actually going to be successful or that somebody would step in and provide him the necessary funding mechanism to go and make this possible. But at the time, this was just another form of activism for this owner, and he found out what happened.
John, Mike from Minnetonka. In regards to the gentleman with the restaurant giving away the food, we're taking a pause, or however he described it. What he's actually saying is we've run out of somebody else's money to pay for other people's free food, so we're going to stop. Why can't he just be completely honest with us?
Yep. Because that's the problem when it comes to socialism, is that eventually you run out of other people's money. We were also talking about public safety, and here at Center of the American Experiment, the guru of public safety is David Zimmer. Good morning, David Zimmer. How are we doing this morning, sir? And thank you so much for joining me on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. The show sounds great. I listened the whole way in, and I'm your least tech-savvy guy, and I was able to find it. So,
good.
It's turning out well for you, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And David, let's do a little bit of background, because here on the show, we are, going to be talking with a lot of the individuals who are obviously involved in American Experiment. And one of the things that I was really excited about in doing the show was AmericanExperiment.org had become a daily go-to source of news and editorials and information because of the amazing staff of writers here and the background that you all have. And one of the things that when we were initially talking about this vision of what I had for the show was, man, it's going to be awesome because I covered the stories that you guys are already writing, but now I can actually bring in the voices behind these stories. And I know that you're not aware of what I'm about to do. Don't get nervous.
All right.
But I brought you in for one particular story, but you had a brand new write-up today that actually falls right in line with what I was just talking about with Michael Rainville, the Minneapolis council member who's on the left, but he's also fiscally conservative and is willing to at least go and identify the problems that Minneapolis is having. So before we dive into a couple of your pieces that you can find at AmericanExperiment.org, let's get everybody familiar with who David Zimmer is and your law enforcement background.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a Minneapolis kid, born and raised, and went to Roosevelt High School and, just kind of that blue-collar kid growing up, and always wanted to be a Minneapolis police officer. Ended up getting hired by the Hennepin County Sheriff instead, and spent over 33 years there. Retired in effectively 2022 and came to work for Center of the American Experiment.
So go back a bit. So how young were you when you were, I'm assuming, inspired to be a Minneapolis police officer? Because I would love to dive into a little bit of what was drawing you to that position, because it seems so counterintuitive to what we see now. Like, I'm shocked there's anybody on the Minneapolis police force, given the individuals that they have to work under. But talk a little bit about what you were experiencing younger that you wanted to be a Minneapolis cop.
Yeah. So my neighborhood growing up in South Minneapolis was a really good neighborhood. It really was. But where there were problems, where there were little bits of violence, that stuck with me, and I always wanted to do something about it. I wanted my neighborhood to be safe and And so just at a very early age, I'd say early teens, I started gravitating towards the idea of becoming a police officer.
You know, it's interesting. When I was in Tucson, Arizona, when I first started there, we had a great relationship with local law enforcement there. They were dealing with a very similar circumstance that Minneapolis is dealing with. Arizona's gotten a little more purple and blue since the time I was there, but at the time, that area, Pima County, one of the largest counties in Arizona, was pretty much staunchly blue, and law enforcement was dealing with a lot of funding issues, staffing issues. And this was being felt around the country, right? When you go back to like 2008. It's funny, though, because I remember at the time the left wasn't pushing to defund the police. They were actually pushing for more community-based policing. They were actually wanting, and these were Democrats that were wanting to see that there was politically advantageous for them to do so at the time. But they wanted to see more law enforcement in the community, directly responding to the community members. There was some liberal agenda there because they were looking at identity politics. We need to have officers that look like the community, and I can certainly understand that in certain cases. But it's interesting when you compare 2008 to what has transpired over the course of really the past 10 years in this defund the police movement, where really, in my opinion, we've seen the left wanting to go and take political advantage of criticizing law enforcement, defund law enforcement. Can you talk a little bit about your experience? Did you see that happen in your time when you were serving in law enforcement, a changeover throughout your career, David?
Oh yeah. Early on in my career, there was never a recruitment and retention problem for maybe the first 20 years of my career. People wanted to go into law enforcement, and the college program, the prep programs they had more students than they knew what to do with. And for example, when I applied to be a Hennepin County deputy, I want to say there were over 1,000 applications for maybe a handful of jobs, 5 or 6 job openings that there were. Now they struggle to get 25 good applicants for a position. So that it has dramatically changed in the last 10 years. And I saw it at the end of my career. That isn't what forced me out, but it was a good time to leave.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you. I don't know how old you are, but when you retired, were you young to retire at that age?
No, I was probably a little bit older.
Oh, really?
Most.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm 60 now. So.
Okay. All right. Well, if it makes you feel any better, you could still be a cop. If you were a cop, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. So, let's go here. Let's start off with this piece again. I want to talk about the U.S. Border Security and Immigration Enforcement and your piece, undeniable success amidst the noise, but. You have an article today up at AmericanExperiment.org focusing on the federal government's decision to investigate the fatal shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy without state and local assistance is consistent with precedent. Federal agencies have always investigated deadly force incidents involving their agents, a practice supported by the Supremacy Clause and the U.S. Supreme Court case. With claims that this approach is unusual are attempts to rewrite history for political gain. So let's get into this a little bit because, even I was curious. I have no faith or trust in Hennepin County Attorney Scary Moriarty and her office at all. That being said, I do try to approach these stories and these issues with an open mind. And, my immediate default is, well, she's doing this for political reasons. But I'll be honest with you. I couldn't really go and point to what those were beyond my own assumptions that she wants to make an example and make the Trump administration look bad. So all of that is to say, I wasn't 100% sure whether or not this should be investigated with state and local assistance as they were pushing back on. So according to your piece, though, you're saying that there's precedent here to have this investigation take place at the federal level without state and local assistance.
Yes, that has been my experience throughout my career. There was never a question up until this past year of whether the feds would investigate a deadly force incident involving a federal agent. Everybody knew the feds would come in. The Department of Justice, which is, it has incredible amounts of resources and experience to properly investigate that type of a case. So not only was that the expectation, that was in the very few instances where it has happened, that is how the process has played out. The federal government has come in, investigated the incident, and state and local prosecutors and police never questioned it until 2026.
Would you begrudge, or what would your view be if the state and local assistance was included with the federal government? So if that were to occur, if you saw the story that said, hey, the federal government's going to work with state and local assistance as we investigate these two incidences, what would your instinctive reaction be?
I would have no problem with it whatsoever. If the federal government made the request and said, hey, Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, or Hennepin County Sheriff, you have some expertise or some equipment that we would like for you to employ in this follow-up investigation, makes complete sense. And I've written several times that I have no problem with, in fact, I really respect the work that the BCA's Force Investigation Unit has done. But they were brought together to investigate state and local officers and provide that resource to state and local agencies. And now it's been flipped into, hey, that unit exists and they are the ones that should investigate all uses of deadly force, including if a federal agent uses that deadly force.
There's been quite a few stories relating to this recently regarding this desire for the federal government to turn over evidence with these cases. I mean, what specifically are they referring to? Again, I look at it from the angle of they're looking for ways to go and continue to criticize the Trump administration and certainly ICE's efforts. But again, not getting into what specifically they were looking for. I mean, is there anything that the federal government should be turning over to them, or does this fall into the same sort of argument that we're talking about of they want state and local authorities involved in this, and so they're trying to go and bolster their argument by saying, and they're not giving us any evidence in all of this? What do you make of that, David Zimmer?
Yeah, I think that's what you just described is exactly what's going on. They wanted access to the information so that they could do daily press conferences and dirty up the ICE effort and the administration effort. And so I've written several times that I'm supportive of the federal government's position in these two cases, the Preddy case and the Good case, to conduct their investigation. And I fully trust they're conducting a complete and well-run investigation behind the scenes, but they're not doing it out in public, which is exactly, in my opinion, the way you actually achieve justice. Because justice has to be achieved for the agents as well as the public. And I don't feel very secure that had Mary Moriarty, for example, been taking the lead on the investigation, that the rights of and the justice for the agents would have been held to the same level that it is now. So
we're talking with David Zimmer here at Center of the American Experiment. He has a piece up today. Moriarty is wrong. The Good and Preddy federal investigations followed precedent. We do have some blasts that have come in to the 612-584-4565, including one from Wade, who apparently says that he knows you.
This is Wade calling. Dave knows me. I was chief steward down at the jail forever. Yep. I wonder if you'd like to touch on, in 2014, when under Freeman and Sheriff Stanek, they quit honoring ICE detainers. Would just be an interesting angle to hear also. Thank you, and hi, Dave.
Yeah, this has certainly been a topic of discussion, the whole issue of the ICE detainers relating to the ICE operation that took place. And as a matter of fact, the piece that I initially brought you in on leans into, what took place with that. But your comments for Wade, who, apparently you worked with before.
Yeah, so there has been a change in how the sheriff's office deals with ICE detainer requests. And people might be surprised to learn that I actually support the idea that the sheriff cannot hold immigration violators solely on the civil ICE detainer request. I understand that. I ran the Hennepin County Jail in the late 2000 teens. This was an issue that got resolved at that point, and we, the Minnesota County Attorneys Association all weighed in on the legality of holding people solely on that ICE detainer. So I understand that we can't hold, but where the rub comes for me is we still need to do the right thing. And when ICE has indicated they want a person that we have in custody, I think it's incumbent on local law enforcement and our sheriffs to make sure that they turn that person over to ICE in a secure setting and not push them out the door and tell ICE, good luck, go find them out in the community.
Yeah, I mean, what do you have? I know let's get into your piece. It opens with there's been a concerted effort by Doing Nothing with My Fingers, open immigration advocates, anti-Trumpers, and supportive legacy media to portray the immigration enforcement's efforts of the Trump administration in the poorest light possible. But you have a different view on this when you sort of take that 30,000-foot view of the issue, right?
Yeah, the reason I looked into the data there is because there had been this growing number of articles and headlines trying to suggest that, actually the Trump administration and ICE have been failing at their mission to actually go after criminals or the worst of the worst. And when I looked at the data, I thought, well, no, they're being really successful at it, actually. And what I found is that when you look at these articles that are critical of the effort, they use selective data and small data sets of, I've actually
every single time, right?
Yeah. I've actually seen one article that parsed it down to a specific, handful of violent crimes that they were then using to say, well, look, they're hardly arresting any of these people. That's because they created such a small data set that it, was unreasonable. When you look at who has a criminal history or a pending criminal charge, so they've committed a crime but haven't been convicted of it, the current stats show that ICE is arresting about 60%. Let me back up. 60% of the ICE arrests right now involve people with a criminal history or a pending criminal charge.
You wrap up this piece at AmericanExperiment.org writing that during the first 18 months, the Trump administration has undeniably secured the U.S. border while dramatically increasing the number of illegal aliens detained within the U.S., including a larger percentage of detainees who are criminal offenders and decreasing the number of illegal aliens paroled into the U.S. as compared to their final year of the Biden administration. And then we had David Gartenstein-Ross on in the first hour of the show. He's our AI analyst and expert. And you actually went into AI to sort of look at some of the information to see what the AI overlords had to say about your data, right?
Right. So the data that I published there was I had to do the computation, right? So I went into the websites and I pulled the data and did the math, if you will. So I wanted to just run it through AI and make sure it was accurate. And I did so, and twice it came back with a answer suggesting, well, you're misleading. The data that you're presenting is misleading the issue. And then I finally sent AI the link to the data sets that I was using. And I said, well, here is the data set. You do the math and get back to me. And I got this very apologetic response from AI, and so I printed it in the. I don't know if you have it in front of you. If you want to read what AI said.
As a matter of fact, let's see here. You are entirely correct to call this out, and I owe you a direct apology. In my initial answers, I failed to look at the raw data directly from the ICE Detention Management Dashboard, relying instead on standard summaries and external policy institute narratives. This was a mistake on my part, and your push for the raw raw math was completely justified. Did you feel vindicated, I assume?
I did, and I felt it was significant enough to add that into my article.
Let's go back to the blaster line. If you want to leave a blast, is 612-584-4565. And here's one from Kenny.
Hey, good morning, John. Kenny from St. Paul. Question for your guest there, who was running, I think he said in the late 2010s, 2010s or whatever, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office or jail system. Why is it illegal, or what is the legal ramification of keeping someone solely on an ICE detainer? That seems like a no-brainer. Like, what's the political, or is it a political ramification, or is it an actually legal issue?
No, it's an actual legal issue because they're not charged with a crime, and the sheriff can only hold criminals. That's what the jail is there for, is to hold criminal defendants. And these ICE detainers are a civil process that ICE employs to let sheriffs know, hey, that's a person we want, so please don't let them out the door. That's really what it's about, is to transfer the custody of those people when their criminal charges expire. Transfer the custody of those people to ICE.
So, I think where people get tripped up on that is that they would immediately, this will be my reaction. I'd be, well, if you're here in the country, you've broken the law and therefore you've committed a crime. But that's not how the law looks at it, correct?
Right.
To a or is it dependent on particular factors, David Zimmer?
Well, so here's what I'll say is there's been this narrative out there that when you cross the border into this country, that is a civil offense.
Okay.
That's the narrative.
Right.
The truth is that all of those illegal border crossings, if you don't come in and present yourself at a port of entry and you remain in our country, that is a crime. There is just such an overwhelming number of people that have done that ICE is not going to create a criminal case on each one of those people in order to deport them. And there is a whole separate process, a civil process that they rightfully can use, and that has existed for, decades. And so that is that civil deportation process, and the ICE detainers are part of that civil process.
Let's bookend the conversation here with regard to going back to Moriarty, and we can tie this into the border issue. So the stance that Hennepin County Attorney Scary Moriarty would take is that she wants the state involved, and the way that I perceive that is because she doesn't trust the federal government. She's been critical of the Trump administration and doesn't trust they're going to go and do the right thing. I have here, though, a story that actually points in the other direction of that. Out of KARE 11, the vetting of an ICE officer involved in a recent deadly shooting in Maine is under review due to allegations of mental health struggles and violent behavior. Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin ordered a pause on vehicle stops after the shooting, but Trump did reverse that decision. Lawmakers are concerned about ICE's training and tactics, with 56% of the complaints of excessive force against officers, and are pushing for answers. And you got to couple in there a lot of the agenda when it comes to the complaints going against ICE. But Tom Homan, a border czar, said if the allegations against the Immigrations and Customs officer are true, I don't think he should have ever been cleared. He should have ever cleared the vetting. And I just wanted to point that out because the federal government and the Trump administration, they want to do the right thing. You don't want to have individuals that are serving in positions of power, especially in law enforcement, that are going to go and abuse that power, or maybe shouldn't be on the streets conducting those law enforcement efforts. And if you have any thoughts on this, David, I'd love to hear them. But I see it as an example, sort of pushing back against those Democrats here in Minnesota and people like Moriarty, who are so critical and untrusting of the administration, that no, the administration and the people under Trump who are tasked with this type of enforcement, they want to do the right thing.
Right. One thing I'll say is I agree with you that the Trump administration has been very proactive. If you look at it honestly, they've been very proactive in dealing with problems. In an endeavor like these ICE initiatives that they've carried out across the country is really, those are really big projects that they're rolling out. And so you're going to expect that some problems arise. But when the problems have arisen, they have dealt with them. and locally here in our own, I'm drawing a blank on what it was called, Ice Out or whatever. I'm forgetting what.
Metro Surge?
Metro Surge.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's so many operations going on right now. Was it Operation Epic Surge? Was it Operation Metro Fury? I don't know.
There you go. So Metro Surge certainly didn't, wasn't carried out perfectly, but the Trump administration dealt with those issues. And if you look at it objectively, within weeks, really. I mean, we had some chaos for 2 or 3 weeks going on, and they dealt with those issues, changing out commanders and, all the way up to the Homeland Security Secretary switching out. So they've dealt with the issues. And then on the issue of law enforcement and whether or not law enforcement agencies want to deal with problem officers. They certainly do. But when you have this retention and recruitment problem that has been created by the left, that's unfortunately, it's one of those unfortunate byproducts of that situation. The applicants for all of these jobs are maybe a step below where they were 15, 20 years ago. And so we just have to redouble our efforts to make sure we're doing solid background checks and not accepting below par people.
It seemed like, at least in my view, it seemed like you had, going back to your point of the changing out of command and leadership during Metro Surge, it seemed like you had, in my view, like a great group of people in place to go and execute Operation Metro Surge if you didn't end up having the on-the-street activism that took place, wherein suddenly now this group of individuals was not the right group to tactfully deal with the opposition they were facing on the street. I liked the individuals, but if you didn't have all the people that ridiculously took to the streets and got in the way of law enforcement, I feel like everything would have gone fairly smoothly and you may have had all the right people in position, but that's not what transpired. And you're right. I feel like the administration moved quickly to identify that and then put people that were better at dealing tactfully with the opposition that they were facing.
Right. And I've spoken to a couple of chiefs and at least one sheriff who dealt with Tom Homan when he came into town early. I think that was maybe February when he came into town.
It's all a blur now.
Yeah.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
They could not speak highly enough about him and about his approach to things. And they said he never, he didn't lie to them and he didn't exaggerate on what they were going to do and changes. He held his ground, but he was also very, very good to work with and wanted to find solutions.
Before I let you go this morning, again, David Zimmer from here at Center of the American Experiment on the John Justice Show. So I know that there's been some legal moves regarding the city of Minneapolis needing to increase the police force because they're not meeting the mandated standards. Just your quick thought. I mean, what are your thoughts on the future of policing in Minneapolis? Are we at all pointed in a better direction? Do you think we're going to be able to find the recruits to fill in those gaps? I'm just curious your thoughts on the state of crime and law enforcement in the city of Minneapolis.
Right. It's pretty pessimistic, actually, because unless that city council changes, that to me is the major roadblock there. Who wants to go to work for a city where the city council is just actively out against you?
Yeah.
I think they
need more Rainvilles. I mean, Rainville seems to be the only voice. He's on the left, but it seems to be the only voice of reason within the city council.
I'm glad you highlighted some of his work. I've met with him, and he is by far the most rational one that I've met there in the council. But until they change their tune, Minneapolis is going to have a retention and recruitment problem. It's just a fact, and that's really sad to see. Again, going back to the beginning of my segment here, I'm a Minneapolis kid, bred and born and bred, and I hate to see what's going on in the city.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and we pray we can turn it around. Pray the elections go the way that we need them to go on the state level, and that if they do, it trickles down to places like because we need a thriving Twin Cities. We need a thriving Minneapolis. And Rainville pointed out in that piece when he was going back to 2018 and 2019 that we were kind of in, there were some indications we were dealing with some potential growing difficulties. But COVID hit, and it gave opportunity and rise to a mentality and an agenda that unfortunately has wreaked havoc on a great city.
Yeah, I've probably been one to be maybe one of the most critical of public safety in Minneapolis. And yet, on almost every one of my articles, I'll end with that note you just said is it's in our collective best interest that Minneapolis doesn't fail. As a state, we can't have our largest city fail and have a Detroit here in Minnesota. So,
well, David Zimmer here at Center of the American Experiment. Thank you for sitting on the American Experiment podcast couch on the show this morning.
Glad to be here.
Looking forward to the next time that you'll be back on the show, and I'll see you in the hallway once the show is over.
Sounds good.
Thanks, buddy. The Biden White House, on a piece from the Daily Wire. They attempted to thwart the Trump administration's mass deportation campaign before it even commenced. These are things that we all had assumed that we're now just getting confirmation on. Senator Eric Schmidt, Republican out of Missouri, he released a presidential memorandum dated on January 2nd of 2024 that senior advisors within the Biden administration produced for then President Joe Biden, advising him to expand the temporary protected status before you leave office. The memo, which appeared to be misdated, is from Biden's senior advisors in the waning days of his lame duck presidency. It was the pitch to expand TPS before you leave office. His team was searching for ways to lock in his mass migration regime before Trump took power. Now, Schmidt wrote in a post on X on Thursday of last week, TPS gives foreign nationals work permits and protection from deportation. A redesignation expands that shield to newly arrived migrants. Biden's team was considering making millions more eligible and then leaving President Trump to process the claims. By the time Biden was preparing to leave office, the administration was overseeing the protected status of roughly 1.2 million people from 16 different countries, the memo stated. The advisors raised concerns about the expiration of TPS for those individuals come 2025 or early 26 and recommended that 2 new countries, Ecuador and Guatemala, be added. While it's impossible to predict with certainty the likelihood of success for any future litigation, prior federal litigation brought by activists during the first Trump administration was successful in halting Trump's and his administration's efforts to terminate TPS. The memo pointed to a growing criticism of Biden's expansion of TPS by Republicans, arguing that the program became a form of amnesty that encourages more illegal immigration. This is just further evidence that it was all by design in the first place. Joe Biden, it wasn't a gaffe by Joe Biden during that debate, that presidential debate, when he said he wanted a surge of illegals coming into the country. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a gaffe. That was him being truthful. Kind of like when he made the comment about how they conducted the most fraudulent voting scheme in history or whatever. That wasn't a gaffe. That was Joe Biden. If it was a gaffe, it was a gaffe because the synapses told him to say it out loud and not keep it inside of his noggin. It was all by design. They knew that if they could allow as many illegal aliens to come into the country as possible, that if the Democrats maintained and retained control, they could go and expand their voter ranks by making them legal to vote. And if they didn't, they could do exactly what's happened. As President Trump gets into office, tries to deal with the immigration and brings about ICE, chaos ensued. They can use it against him and call him an authoritarian dictator. Hakeem Jeffries suggests that no Democrats, by the way, I had a couple of clips regarding immigrations and customs enforcement I want to share with you. So Hakeem Jeffries, he suggests that no Democrats have called to abolish ICE. First off, it's a straight up lie. I could spend the remaining half hour of the show playing audio clips from Democrats here in Minnesota alone, in Minneapolis alone, talking about abolishing ICE. But here's what he had to say in a recent CNN interview.
I think one of the things that some of those who are winning their primaries and will likely be in office want to know is if you are going to agree to hold votes on abolishing ICE, opening borders, things of that nature. Will you?
Well, I've spoken to several of the incoming members of Congress across the ideological spectrum. Not a single person has raised those issues.
Nothing to see here, guys. Nobody's ever said abolish ICE. I don't know what you're talking about. By the way, apparently now Hakeem Jeffries is self-identifying as a goldfish. As opposed to an elephant. I got that right? It's the goldfish that forget they have the short-term memory.
That's correct.
Right, Isaac? Okay, just making sure. You were chuckling.
I was chuckling.
But I wasn't sure if you were chuckling because I got the example wrong or if I actually got it right. But I now just completely ruined the joke. But he's self-identifying as a goldfish. If you want to leave us a blast, you can do so. 612-584-4565. 612-584-4565. Here's Scott.
You can hold an illegal who's not a citizen of the United States without charges. They do not have constitutional rights of an American citizen. That is the whole part of them being illegal. They are not protected, and this was just adjudicated by the Supreme Court. So, yeah, you can hold them without charges until ICE come get them.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Oh, by the way, John, great show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So far, or just great show in general? I'll say great show so far. We still got a half hour left. But I appreciate you dropping us a blast there. Let's also go here. I got one more ICE clip for you. Okay, so this woman... There's a theme in the show today. This happens a lot. These are these themes that emerge that I had no intention of putting together, right? So you had the modern times, the postmodern times restaurant owner who put forward this plan to offer up, pay what you want for our food. It's not a business model. It's just you're just providing free food at this point in time, right? He did it out of his own activism. What did you expect was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen when you go and do that? And the same thing rings true for this woman. So this woman posts a video of herself online. She's very upset. She's very mad. You see, she took a picture next to one of those classic outdoor convenience store ice machines. You know, the big, bulky, gray ones that have that very specific metal texture and that very specific identifiable ICE logo that has the little cartoon characters of the ice. She's standing next to it, and she's flipping it off. Which is what I just did to the people watching on the stream. Sorry about that, by the way. That was not aimed at you. I was giving an example. So this liberal white woman ends up breaking down in tears because when she posted that photo, she also put FCK ICE. And the response was not what she expected. Well, lady, what did you think was going to happen?
I do content creation and I love it. But I posted a photo yesterday. And there were just hundreds of people in the comments just calling me the most horrible things that you could ever think of.
Oh, by the way, for anybody that's wondering, yes, indeed, she has a septum ring. I just want to... But I figured out what the septum ring is for because I don't understand the phenomenon. I don't find it attractive at all. And I'm not an individual that has any problem with women piercings or tattoos. The septum ring just never... I never understood it. I think that's how they receive the liberal agenda signal. I think it's like an antenna in their schnoz. That's my guess. Anyway, here's more of her being upset. I was like, why are people doing this? Well, wise up, lady.
That shit wears on your soul. Reading over and over again how fat and ugly I am.
Oh, see, people shouldn't do that. There are lines.
What the fuck is wrong with you people?
What is wrong with you? It tells you how delusional these individuals are because they're so locked in their bubble. She posted that online and she was thinking, oh, everybody's going to love this because all my friends think the same way that I do. All of my friends feel the same way. So when I post this online, everybody's going to be like, yeah, lady, blank ice. You're on it. Yeah. And then she posts it and you go, oh, you mean there's another world out there where people don't agree with my nonsense? Speaking of Joe Biden, before we move on to Minnesota paid family medical leave, and you want to stick around for this, by the way. I have some good stuff coming up in just a moment. I saved this for the very end of today's show. So, recordings of Joe Biden's interviews with his memoirs ghostwriter obtained during the investigation into his handling of the classified documents have been released. I'm assuming these are the documents that were kept next to his green Corvette in the garage. And that, right? God, talk about seeming like a lifetime ago. Remember that controversy? The recordings reveal that Biden struggled with memory and speech, reinforcing special counsel Robert Hur's characterization of Biden's limited memory. The Oversight Project argues that the release of these tapes necessitates a re-examination of the decision not to pursue criminal charges against Biden. So since we are not decidedly guaranteed human on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment, we can tap into our AI overlords. This was an AI parody that we did not play a bunch on the show. I do believe it was created by Representative Max Reimer, who will be with us in studio on Friday for Freedom Friday. But we wanted to come up with a parody regarding the auto pen. And since my natural taste in music leans more towards 80s alternative rock, especially keyboard-based, we wanted to have something that maybe was a little bit more mass appeal for the rock enthusiast out there. So with that, here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment, I give you Auto Pen in the Dead of Night.
Not seen. Paper trails on a midnight spree. A silent scribe in the land of the free. Metal hand with a soulless grace. Leaves his name, but it hides his face. Auto pen writes in the dead of night. Mechanical ghost in the pale moonlight. The leader's mark without his hand. Sign of the times and this shifting sand. Empty halls, hear the wailing sound. A signature falls, but he's not around. Ink flows cold like a lifeless stream. Dreams are signed by a faceless dream. Punch the keys, but it feels so hollow. Echoes fade in a world we follow. Man or machine, who takes the blame? In the end, it's all the same. Auto pen writes in the dead of night. Mechanical ghost in the pale moonlight. The leader's mark
shortened version because AI decided to do a little solo portion.
Rights in the dead of night, mechanical ghost in the pale moonlight. The leader's mark without his head, sign of the times in this shifting sand.
All right, and thank you too.
In this shifting sand.
Our AI overlords for AutoPen in the dead of night. I totally didn't pull that story just to play the song. That didn't happen. I didn't see it and go, ooh. It bums me out, though, because I have a Sydney Sweeney parody. I didn't know that I was going to go there this morning, and I could have grabbed it, and I need to load it. I'll load it into the 100% functional all the time program that we're using for the John Justice Show so that I can play that next time. All right. Minnesota's paid leave program. Okay, this goes back 3 weeks. I actually have an update here as well, but this goes back about 3 weeks. So when I was out traversing the country, Minnesota's paid leave program has paid out far more than it has brought in so far. Some applicants say they are waiting months for approval, and this is before we even dive, into the program sort of in and of itself and how it's just a redistribution of wealth. This is just talking about the execution of the program, the ability of people to use it. And this is before we even talk about it, the lack of its validity. For the first 6 months, the state paid out $598 million, bringing in $344 million through the new wage tax known as the doing that thing with my fingers premium payments. The Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED, said during a news conference that week that another $70 million is available for benefit payments left over from the $688 million one-time startup fund approved by the state lawmakers when they created the program. Even so, there appear to be funding gaps between the benefits paid out and the money to cover them as of the beginning of July. However, DEED has not directly addressed this. Roger Younger, the Minnesota paid leave applicant, a military veteran, is still waiting for approval, for example, after his February cancer surgery. He is among the people who have contacted, at the time, 5 Eyewitness News with concerns about getting help. I don't begrudge anybody for going and taking advantage of this program, okay? Your money is being used to pay into it. If you legitimately need to go and take advantage of paid family medical leave, then you should. It would be foolish not to, right? So this is not a pushback on anybody that's gone and legitimately taken advantage of the program. But we also know there's a lot of people that are not legitimately using the program. They're faking these instances to get this massive amount of time off, putting a burden on employers, costing taxpayers, you and me, even more money from our paychecks every single week. I'll never use this program personally. I won't. I don't want to burden, my employer, whether it's my new amazing employer or that former shall not be named employer. But if somebody does, I don't have a problem with that. But the program's unsustainable. From Alpha News, Minnesota paid leave program offering up to 20 weeks of paid leave has paid out nearly, as we were talking about, $600 million in benefits in its first 6 months. The program, funded by a 0.88% payroll tax, could see an increase in the tax rate for the 2027 based on results of the study expected by the end of this month. Listen, Minnesota paid leave was passed despite strong objections from the state business community. They warned the program would crush small businesses, and that's exactly what it's doing. The program officially became operational in January of this year. Yes, it really has become. I conjures up Star Wars, and Death Star is fully operational. That's what the Minnesota paid family medical leave. It's a Death Star. Premiums is how the state refers to the payroll taxes that fund the Minnesota paid leave. This all easily covers the $598 million in benefits that were paid for the first 2 quarters of 2026. Deed told Alpha News, however, the 0.88% payroll tax that funds Minnesota paid leave could increase or decrease next year based on the results of a study that will be released by the end of the month. In short, this means that Minnesotans could see a paid tax increase if the program requires more money. Yeah, it's coming. Just get ready for it. When you go through, again, the list of Minnesota's challenges and how we're on the wrong track, 68% of Minnesotans feel like the state is on the wrong track. Kids in Mississippi reading better than kids in Minnesota. Minnesota is now below average state economically. 55% of Minnesota students can't do math at a grade level. Minnesota taxes small businesses more than any other state. Minnesota's government let fraudsters steal over $9 billion. When you look at the taxes, when you look at our economy, those are things that are directly going to fare worse than they already are because of paid family medical leave. And yet you have DFL shills like this individual, Chuck Johnson, in the Minnesota Reformer, out there saying, and this is the headline on the article. All right. A great thing happened January 1 this year. Minnesota launched its paid family medical leave program. Oh boy. So what are they referring to here? Because I was genuinely curious. I'm like, how? Okay. It's been a success. It spent more money than we're bringing in. We're probably going to have to raise the payroll taxes to go and cover this. It was determined that people were attempting fraud the moment the program started. It's going to be unsustainable. So what metric could they be learning from? Or what metric could they be pulling from? So first off, he talks about what the program does. Says the paid leave fills gaps for many workers, particularly low-wage workers whose jobs did not come with those benefits. And yet they still have mandated time off. You still have sick time. You see, the left goes and acts like the world wasn't functioning and people weren't able to take any sort of time off for any reasons before we had paid family medical leave. Just all the people stuck at work sick, going to work every day because they needed gallbladder surgery and they just couldn't get it. So they're sitting there with a gallbladder. They needed to be removed because they didn't have paid family medical leave. Now they can have it removed. Okay. But that's not what he's referring to in terms of success. No, Chuck Johnson writes this. There's another noteworthy aspect of Minnesota's paid leave program. It launched successfully, no glitches, on time, and under budget. He spends almost 4 full pages not about the need of the program, not about the redistribution wealth angle of the program, not about the potential for fraud and people taking advantage of it, not about the burden that's going on businesses. And I'm saying these all in the negative. You could easily go and spin all these into a positive. No. He basically is saying, listen, the program worked as it was designed, so it's a success. He says it's worth examining how and why paid leave was so successful. I sat down with Evan Rowe, the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Economic, of DEED, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, which manages the program, and Greg Norfleet, the Director of Paid Leave, to discuss how they approached and ultimately executed a successful launch. Now, I will give a little credit where credit is due. Here in Minnesota, okay, a program that actually works like it's supposed to is a big deal. We've had plenty of programs that simply have not worked the way that they are supposed to. So in that case, I give him a little bit of credit where credit is due. That in this case here, we had Minlars. That was a failure, okay? But he focuses on 3 success factors: aligning with policy and operations, focus on customers, building on strengths. DEED made use of existing technology and business processes wherever possible. State government should celebrate and learn from the lessons of paid leave. This is at the end of the piece, okay? Success in government is often overlooked, while failure is under a microscope. Success is kind of boring, which is why news crews aren't out at the airport reporting on the modern miracle of airplanes landing safely one after another. Okay. But when it comes to the operations of government, I can assure you that boring is just fine for government leaders and the public that they serve. This entire piece, again, was just on the technical aspect of the program operating the way it should and not about the ramifications of that operation. It's the, I'll do the equivalent game here. It's the equivalent of a well-made automobile that some psycho is using to mow down pedestrians and then writing an editorial of how well the car was constructed and ignoring that it's being used to maim and flatten people. I'll give you another one. You know, boy, Jeffrey Dahmer's cooking was top notch. Here's what we can learn from the chef of human flesh. You know, and unfortunately, people buy into this nonsense. There's a level of truth to it. Okay, he can tout its success all he wants. He's not all he wants to. He's not wrong in this. He's right. It has been successful in redistributing unfairly the wealth of hardworking Minnesotans. So yes, in that sense, according to the Democrat and the liberal agenda, paid family medical leave, yeah, it has been an absolute success. Has somebody written a Jeffrey Dahmer cookbook? Probably not. I doubt that would be the case. Listen, this brings to a close today's John Justice Show presented by American Experiment. A couple things before I let you go this morning. If you want to support the show, and we're so appreciative of everybody that's reached out wanting to go and support the show, head on over to AmericanExperiment.org. Go to the John Justice Show page. You can also, if you follow me on X or if you follow at MN Think Tank, there are links available there, but you can make a donation and you can get a new fancy schmancy embroidered John Justice hat with a brand new logoed hat created by Isaac. It's a nice job on that, my friend.
Thank you.
I know we have more logoed gear coming up. If you wanted to advertise on this show, we are currently lining up our guests we're currently lining up advertisers. Just drop me an email, john.justice@americanexperiment.org, and I will get you pointed in the right direction. But we're looking forward to the sponsors that are hopping on board. Thank you to everybody who's already made a donation and got your hat, but go and get them while they last. There's some posts this morning of a show group wearing a new John Justice hat. He, of course, is the estranged brother of Grogu. We are back tomorrow starting at 6 a.m., so we'll work on some technical things, right? We'll learn something new every single day. As we wrap up today's show, I have something special for you. So this is a full version of Zima Fizz, but this is the alternate 2.0 version of Zima Fizz. Many people don't know that the infamous Zima Fizz song created by Representative Max Reimer, he actually made two different versions. I picked one to use as the intro, but I also listened to the other one quite often. There's subtle differences, even though the lyrics are the same. So as we close out the Tuesday show, thank you so much for joining us. Remember to download the MixLR app if you haven't done so already. You can watch and subscribe on the American Experiment YouTube and Facebook page. We'll get to X reconnected for tomorrow's show. Have yourself a fantastic Tuesday. God bless, and I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday morning. He's really a banger of a tune.
Oscar Wilde's his sacred ground.
It's completely self-serving because it's about the things that I love. But it's still a banger.
Spinning around. Embark on journeys in the stars. A galaxy of hope and scars. With every word, a world takes flight. Justice writes in the cosmic night.